Imagine this: a warm summer afternoon in one of Atlanta's most exclusive neighborhoods. The sky is a brilliant shade of blue, the air carries the faint scent of freshly cut grass, and the sound of birds chirping completes the picture of suburban perfection. Michael Carter, a retired police officer with 15 years of service under his belt, is finally enjoying the fruits of his labor. After years of long shifts, overtime hours, and a relentless commitment to his savings plan, he has achieved a lifelong dream: home ownership. And not just any home. This is a stunning two-story property, complete with a pristine swimming pool that glistens under the Georgia sun. As he leans back in his lounge chair, the cool breeze washing over him, Michael allows himself a rare moment of relaxation. But that peace is about to be shattered. The sudden wail of sirens slices through the tranquility, jarring him from his brief escape. Within seconds, two patrol cars come to a screeching stop right outside his property, their tires skidding against the pavement. The doors swing open, and uniformed officers step out, hands instinctively resting on their holsters as they approach the gate with cautious authority. "Sir," one of them calls out, "we've received a report of a suspicious individual trespassing in this pool area." Michael sits up, his pulse quickening, a familiar tightness forming in his chest. He doesn't need to ask who made that call. He already knows. Through the corner of his eye, he catches a glimpse of movement. There she is, his neighbor, Karen Thompson, peering out from behind her lace curtains with that all-too-familiar smirk of satisfaction. He recognizes that look, the same one she's worn every time she's tried to make his life miserable. But what Karen doesn't realize is that this time, she's pushed too far. Before we get to the breaking point, let's rewind, back to where this all began. 2 months earlier, Michael could still remember the day he moved in, the overwhelming sense of pride that swelled in his chest as he carried the first box through the front door of his new home. It wasn't just about the property itself, it was about what it represented, a testament to years of discipline, hard work, and perseverance. Growing up, his parents had always dreamed of owning a house in a neighborhood like this, but it had never been within reach. Now Michael was the one breaking that barrier, carving out a space for himself in an area where he wasn't exactly expected to be. And it didn't take long for his new neighbor to make that painfully clear. The first time he noticed Karen Thompson, she was standing by her upstairs window, phone pressed against her ear, watching him intently as he arranged his patio furniture. Her gaze lingered, scrutinizing him in a way that made his skin crawl. Trying to be polite, Michael gave her a quick nod and a wave. But instead of returning the gesture, she abruptly disappeared behind her curtains. That should have been his first warning. The very next day, while he was out picking up supplies at the hardware store, his phone buzzed with a motion alert from his security camera. Curious, he opened the app and nearly dropped his phone in disbelief. There she was, Karen, bold as ever, strolling right through his unlocked back gate like she owned the place. Dressed in an expensive swimsuit and clutching a designer beach towel, she made herself at home, setting up her things on one of his lounge chairs before dipping her feet into his pool. By the time Michael returned and confronted her, her response was nothing short of infuriating. "Oh," she gasped, pressing a hand to her chest in mock surprise. "I thought you were the new pool maintenance guy. The previous owners always let me use their pool." Her saccharine smile, dripping with condescension, sent a wave of heat through Michael's veins. But his years on the force had trained him to keep his composure. "Ma'am, I'm not the maintenance guy," he replied evenly. "I'm the new owner, and I'd appreciate it if you asked permission before entering my property." Karen's expression flickered between shock and indignation, her mouth opening and closing as if grasping for the right words. Then she let out a forced, nervous laugh. "You?" she said, voice laced with disbelief. "The owner." Michael's jaw tightened. He could see it in her eyes, the way she hesitated, the way she avoided saying what she really meant. "There must be some mistake," she continued, her hand gesturing vaguely. "I know the realtor who handled this sale, and she never mentioned—" "Well," she trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Michael refused to take the bait. "There's no mistake, Mrs. Thompson," he said firmly. "This is my home, and you're trespassing. Please leave." Karen's face darkened, her lips pressing into a thin line. As she gathered her things, she muttered just loud enough for him to hear, "We'll see about that." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Over the next few weeks, Karen's antics went from merely irritating to downright outrageous. One Saturday morning, Michael awoke to the unmistakable sounds of laughter and splashing coming from outside. He pulled back his bedroom curtains and his stomach dropped. Karen had invited four of her friends over for a full-blown pool party in his backyard. Furious, Michael stormed outside. "You all need to leave. Now," he demanded. "This is private property." Karen, lounging in a pool chair with an expensive cocktail in hand, barely spared him a glance. "Oh, don't be so difficult," she scoffed, waving him off. "We're just having a little fun. Besides, this pool barely gets any use." Her friends shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing they'd been caught in a lie. "Karen told us she had permission," one woman mumbled, hastily gathering her things. Michael clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. "Mrs. Thompson, this is your final warning," he said, his voice sharp. "The next time you trespass, I'm calling the police." Karen merely smirked. "Go ahead," she taunted. "I know everyone at the precinct. My husband plays golf with Captain Richards." That was the last straw. That same afternoon, Michael installed a full security system with high-resolution cameras. Years of law enforcement had taught him a crucial lesson: document everything. And it didn't take long for the footage to reveal just how far Karen was willing to go. In the following days, his cameras caught her testing the gate, peering into his windows, and, most shockingly, attempting to use a copied key from the previous owners. But the final straw came when he returned home to find 8 women drinking wine and lounging by his pool. This time he didn't hesitate. He called the police. When officers Davis and Martinez, his former colleagues, arrived, Karen immediately switched to tears. "Officers, thank God you're here," she sobbed. "This man is harassing us. We've always had pool privileges, and he's being completely unreasonable." Officer Martinez didn't buy it for a second. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "Mr. Carter was one of our best officers. If he says you're trespassing, you're trespassing. Please leave before we have to make this official." Karen's face burned with humiliation, but she wasn't done yet. That night, Michael discovered his pool water had been tainted with dish soap, a deliberate act of vandalism that would take days to fix. Karen had declared war, and Michael was ready. As Michael stood by his pool, watching the sudsy mess swirl under the afternoon sun, frustration simmered inside him. His once crystal-clear water, now tainted with dish soap, was yet another violation in a long string of Karen's petty, vindictive acts. He clenched his fists, breathing deeply to suppress the irritation threatening to boil over. But then an idea struck him, a plan so perfect, so fitting, that for the first time in weeks, he let out a genuine chuckle. If Karen was so obsessed with his pool, so determined to trespass and claim it as her own, perhaps it was time she got exactly what she wanted, just with a little surprise. His mind flashed back to a conversation he'd once had with an old partner on the force. They had worked a case involving a public pool that had been illegally tampered with. To detect leaks, maintenance workers had used a temporary, non-toxic dye that reacted with certain chemicals found in sunscreen and beauty products. The result? A harmless but highly visible stain that took days, sometimes even a week, to fully fade. Michael wasted no time. He dove into research, ensuring that the dye he planned to use was perfectly safe. It was a professional-grade solution designed for leak detection, widely used in the industry. The best part? It wouldn't affect everyone, only those who had slathered on specific cosmetic products. And knowing Karen's love for luxury brands, he had a pretty good idea which ones she used. To be certain, he ran a small test. Taking one of the half-empty sunscreen bottles Karen had left behind on his pool chair, he mixed a sample with the dye in a bucket of water. Within seconds, the liquid turned a vibrant shade of green. A slow grin spread across Michael's face. This was going to be legendary. As fate would have it, the timing couldn't have been better. Through the ever-active neighborhood gossip mill, Michael learned that Karen was planning yet another unauthorized pool gathering that weekend. A small social event, she had announced in the community Facebook group. "We must keep our neighborhood's charm intact despite recent changes." Michael rolled his eyes. Recent changes was obviously code for his presence in the community, but instead of anger, amusement filled him. She had no idea what she was walking into. Over the next few days, Michael meticulously prepared. He installed 3 additional security cameras, strategically placing them at different angles to capture every possible moment of the upcoming event. Then on Friday evening, he poured the special dye into the pool, ensuring that it was well mixed and completely undetectable. To the naked eye, the water remained pristine, sparkling under the sun as if nothing had changed. Then he waited. On Saturday morning, he made sure Karen saw him packing up his car, making it look as though he was heading out for the entire day. He even threw in a little theatrical touch, checking his watch and muttering, "Won't be back until late." Then instead of leaving, he parked around the corner and quietly slipped back into his house, settling into his home office. From there, he had a perfect vantage point, both through his window and via the live feed from his security cameras. He didn't have to wait long. At exactly 2 p.m., right on schedule, Karen arrived with her usual entourage, 6 impeccably dressed women carrying designer beach bags and oversized sunglasses. They walked right through his backyard gate like they owned the place, laughing and chatting without a care in the world. "Ladies," Karen announced dramatically, holding up a glass of champagne, "welcome to our private oasis. The new owner is never around, so consider this our weekend retreat." Michael shook his head in disbelief. The audacity. One by one, the women lounged by the poolside, setting up their towels, adjusting their sunglasses, and, just as he expected, applying layers of their expensive sunscreen. They dipped their feet in first, sighing in delight at the cool water. Then Karen took the lead, diving in with a graceful splash. Her friends followed suit, giggling and enjoying their refreshing dip. For a few minutes, everything seemed normal. Then the first shriek cut through the air. Karen, what's wrong with your skin?" Michael leaned closer to his screen, watching in pure satisfaction as panic unfolded before his eyes. Karen looked down at her arms and immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. Her normally pale skin was turning an unmistakable shade of green. Not just any green, but a bright, almost neon hue that made her look like she had fallen into a vat of radioactive waste. One by one, the other women noticed the same horrifying transformation happening to their own bodies. Their hands, their faces, their perfectly manicured legs. Everything was turning green. "Oh my God, my daughter's wedding is next week," one woman wailed, frantically scrubbing at her arms. Another, nearly in tears, shrieked, "This isn't washing off! What is this?" Karen, still dripping wet, was shaking with rage. Her eyes darted around until they landed on something. A small, blinking red light, one of Michael's security cameras. Realization dawned. Her mouth opened and closed as she tried to form words, but all that came out was a strangled, furious noise. The scene that followed was pure chaos. 6 green-tinted women bolted from the pool, shrieking and scrambling to gather their things. Their designer swimsuits clung to them, the now viral green hue staining their once flawless skin. They dashed through the neighborhood, leaving a trail of wet, green footprints behind. Michael had never seen anything funnier in his life. Michael didn't stop there. That night he edited the footage, perfectly piecing together a video compilation of Karen's past trespassing incidents, her vandalism, and, of course, the grand finale of her transformation. He even set it to the same soft jazz music they had been playing at the pool party. Then he uploaded it. The internet did the rest. Within hours, the video went viral. The title, "Trespassing, Karen Gets Green with Envy." Comment sections exploded. "This is the greatest revenge story I've ever seen." The level of planning, mastermind behavior. She wanted the pool so bad, well, now it's a part of her. By the next morning, even local news stations had picked up the story. Karen had become an overnight internet sensation for all the wrong reasons. Her real estate agency, now flooded with negative attention, released an official statement distancing themselves from her. "We uphold the highest ethical standards. The actions shown in the viral video do not reflect our company values." Meanwhile, the neighborhood had a complete shift in attitude. Residents who had once stayed silent finally spoke up. "She did the same thing to us last year." She reported my holiday decorations to the HOA for being too festive. She once called the police on a group of Girl Scouts selling cookies. Karen's downfall was swift and merciless. The final nail in the coffin? Her desperate attempt at a damage control video. Sitting in front of a camera, her skin still faintly green, she tried to explain herself. I was just trying to maintain community standards, she whined. The internet had a field day. Screenshots of her green-tinged face flooded social media, meme after meme immortalizing her downfall. And as for Michael, he simply enjoyed his pool in peace, raising a drink to Karen whenever he caught her peeking through her curtains, still faintly green. Karma had never looked so good. Karen's last-ditch attempt at revenge was nothing short of spectacular in its failure. Determined to reclaim control of the narrative, she announced a special emergency HOA meeting titled Community Safety and the Dangers of Unauthorized Pool Chemicals. It sounded serious, even urgent. But when the day arrived, only 3 people showed up. 2 elderly residents who had mistakenly believed it was about water filtration systems, and 1 woman who had brought popcorn just for the entertainment. To make matters worse, each of them wore small green ribbons pinned to their shirts in a subtle but unmistakable show of solidarity with Michael. Karen, standing at the front of the nearly empty room, looked as though she had swallowed a lemon. She had spent weeks trying to reframe herself as the victim. Yet the neighborhood had already made up its mind. The era of Karen was over, and no amount of damage control could change that. But the most poetic moment came not from the HOA meeting, but from a completely different setting, the local golf course. Michael didn't even have to witness it firsthand. The news traveled fast. Do you have any idea how hard it is to close a real estate deal when your wife is literally green? Karen's husband was overheard venting to his golfing buddies. His voice carried across the pristine fairway, frustration dripping from every word. She can't even show houses right now. Clients keep asking if she's feeling ill. If Michael had been drinking something at that moment, he probably would have choked on it from laughing. Instead, he simply smiled when he heard about it later and went on enjoying his peaceful, Karen-free afternoons. When reporters reached out for a comment, hoping to get a dramatic response from the man whose viral video had turned a neighborhood nuisance into an internet sensation, Michael kept it simple. Everyone's welcome to use my pool, he said with a calm, collected smile. They just need to ask permission first. That single sentence spoke volumes, and the internet loved it. Then one morning, the cherry on top arrived. A for sale sign had appeared in front of Karen's house. Subtle at first, then bold and impossible to ignore. The once overly confident queen of the cul-de-sac was moving out. For all the elaborate schemes and manipulative tactics she had employed to try and drive Michael away, in the end, she was the one packing her bags. Even though the green hue had finally faded from her skin, her reputation remained permanently stained. The mere sight of Michael's house seemed to be enough to set her on edge. When driving through the neighborhood, she started taking the long way around, avoiding his street like it was cursed ground. The best part? Michael never had to lift a finger. He had let karma take the wheel, and it had driven Karen straight out of the neighborhood. But life in the cul-de-sac didn't just return to normal, it improved. That weekend, Michael hosted his biggest pool party yet, complete with sizzling barbecue, ice-cold lemonade, and an open invitation to all his neighbors. The ones who actually respected boundaries. The once fractured community had come together in a way it never had before. Parents chatted by the poolside, kids played happily in the water, and laughter filled the air. Even Tom, the grumpy neighbor from 2 doors down, made an appearance, sipping his drink as he watched the festivities unfold. You know, Tom mused, shaking his head with a chuckle, I've lived here for 20 years, and this is the first time I actually feel like I know my neighbors. Across the street, the Rodriguez kids had turned Karen's downfall into a neighborhood joke. They tiptoed past her now listed for sale house, wearing oversized swim goggles and towels draped over their shoulders, whispering dramatically, "Shh, don't tell Karen." Their parents? They didn't even bother stopping them. Meanwhile, real estate agents had a new challenge on their hands, explaining to potential buyers why Karen was selling her house. So, this neighborhood has, some history, they would begin awkwardly. You may have seen a certain viral video. Now don't worry, the pool dye was totally temporary, and it's not a recurring issue. Try as they might to downplay it, the story had become a legend. Karen made one final public appearance at an HOA meeting before her departure, clearly hoping to restore some sense of dignity before leaving for good. She had a prepared speech, likely another long-winded rant about neighborhood standards. But before she could even begin, someone from the back of the room started humming. It's not easy being green. At first it was just a quiet hum. Then another person joined in, and another. Within seconds, barely suppressed laughter spread through the room. Karen turned red. An improvement from green, some might say. But she wasn't sticking around for the finale. Flustered, humiliated, and defeated, she stormed out. By the time her moving truck finally pulled away from the neighborhood, Michael was relaxing in his backyard, a glass of lemonade in hand, watching the sun reflect off the pristine water of his undisturbed pool. He wasn't celebrating Karen's departure. No, that wasn't his style. What he was really appreciating was the way standing up to a bully had transformed the community into something better. 1 year later, the neighborhood had changed for the better. The family that moved into Karen's old house, a friendly interracial couple with twin daughters, fit seamlessly into the community. Their girls, both competitive swimmers, spent hours practicing in Michael's pool on weekends. And sometimes guests would ask about a certain framed photo hanging near the pool gate. It showed a group of people running through the neighborhood, dripping wet, their skin unmistakably green. Michael never explained it outright. He simply smiled and said, "That's a reminder that karma has a way of making a splash." The security cameras were still in place, but these days they captured different moments. Birthday parties, kids learning to swim, and neighbors actually enjoying each other's company. The HOA meetings? Shorter, friendlier, remarkably free of passive-aggressive debates about property values. Then just last week, Michael received an interesting email. A local news station had reached out. Apparently, Karen, now relocated to another state, was already making waves in her new neighborhood. Something about demanding access to someone else's private tennis court. Michael read the email, let out a small chuckle, and hit delete. Some things, after all, never change. As he leaned back in his chair, floating peacefully in the crystal-clear water of his beloved pool, he reflected on everything. The entire ridiculous, frustrating, hilarious journey. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about standing your ground with dignity and letting karma take care of the rest. And if you ever find yourself dealing with a Karen, just remember, security cameras are your best friend. And maybe, just maybe, keep a little pool dye handy. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment if you think Karen got exactly what she deserved. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of sweet, satisfying karma.